So I'm Dean Wiseman. I'm the chair of the NSS Photo Salon. I've been doing this, this is my 6th or 7th year doing this, either as a co-chairman with Katie Salkup, and then running it as chairman after Katie retired. What I plan to do today is bring up the PowerPoint that we used to create the salon, looking at some of the award winners in terms of honorable mention, talking about some of the aspects of their images and why they were awarded the way they are. But before I do that, I would like to discuss a little bit about this year's salon and some of the things that we faced with COVID, and some things that we're going to be moving in terms of future direction. Since most of the people here I think Florian was an artist that submitted work this year. He's trying to sign in. But the rest of you, I don't recognize your names, so I assume that you have either not submitted for a few years or are intending to submit perhaps in the future. And I want to help you guys, since you guys seem to be the primary audience today. Let me think and gather my thoughts for a second. So let's pull up and look at just some of the images real quick, just to help me get started with some of the thoughts that I have. Share screen. Okay. All right, here it is. So the first thing I would tell you is that while there is an emphasis on awards, you know, people like to get awards, and I like to give awards, and that's a fun part of doing the photo salon. Nevertheless, the salon is first and foremost a celebration of art. That is to say, it's meant to highlight our photographers' experiences in caves, you know, in recent years. You can submit a photo that's 20 years old if you want, but by and large, most of our photos are taken within the previous year, or even a few months prior to the entry deadline. So I'm going to see if I can pause this. This is on a timer, so it may scroll through here. Let me see what I can do. I'm going to stop this. The award-winning pool of photos this year was very strong as a whole. The technical proficiency in the photos that were submitted, as well as those that were accepted and then ultimately awarded, was higher as a whole. At first, I thought we were going to have a down year. It felt like we did. Some of the folks that contribute year in and year out didn't make contributions, but we had a number of new artists. But overall, the technical proficiency was higher. That said, there was one comment from one of the judges that said, while the technical proficiency was higher, we didn't have that hair blow back image this year. And I think that's maybe my first message to you all. If you intend to submit to the photo salon, get your technique down. I did have an entry or two, particularly late, that either A, didn't fit the criteria for the photo salon, or just wasn't at the level of technical proficiency to accept into the salon, much less for awards. I had somebody that submitted a set of, it was actually a website. They had their photographs on a website, and it was a virtual tour of this cave, neither of which was really appropriate for this salon. The salon's really first and foremost for still images of high technical proficiency. So we want to have good technique, and it seems like our artists that are contributing regularly over the past few years, the technique has gone way up. Our average quality of image is much higher than it was 5 or 10 years ago. That said, the judges placed a high merit on innovation, on images that they are not seeing year in and year out. I don't want to. I'm never going to dash. I'm never going to bash a photographer for their exceptionally high technical images. That said, the folks that seem to be getting the high scores and the highest awards are the ones who are not only technically exceptional, but also bringing out emotion. And that's a good one for Lee here. This is a photo of Lee White, who passed away last year, unfortunately, for all of us, an exceptional caver. And so this photo actually won an award because of that emotional content. I did get some comments from the non-caver judges. I did include somebody who was a professional artist with the idea of bringing some non-caver perspective. I like to have ecumenical judge panels. I really, really do. It helps us stay honest with rigor. It also helps improve when we have consensus images that win. I wouldn't want to have a jury panel that's so skewed that it ends up being super selective for a certain type of image. And so I try to keep my jury panels as ecumenical as possible. But this photo did, in fact, make honorable mention for the fact that it's a lovely image of Lee. It has some emotional content, but one of the non-cavers said would have liked to have zoomed in a little more on seeing his face a little bit closer to get that edginess of his effort, if you know what I mean. But let's look at some of the other slides here. I'm going to move forward. So be willing to take risks. Be willing to try to look at something from a different perspective. For instance, this image was awarded. This is by Florian Bachmann, an excellent image. A little bit hot down there. So I'm moving the image on you. I don't mean to do that. Let me just bring it up in the presentation, and it'll be showing for a few seconds, and I can use the pointer. It's a little bit hot right here. There are some hot spots, and that would be a bit of a demerit, but it's an exceptionally beautiful image and an exceptionally beautiful cave. And it's well lit across. You have an excellent range, leading lines. The focus is pin sharp. The only real technical demerit would be a little bit of hot white pixels in and around the caver, which is not a terrible thing in this image. A little bit around that stalagmite. Some judges would take issue with that. And so that's what you see in a lot of these honorable mentions, is that you see really, really good technical images. This Mouth of the Beast by Tiffany Nardico, a really, really nice, well-balanced image with a caver center. Our judges tend to like images with dynamic posing and seemingly in motion. We didn't have a lot of those this year. Here's an example of a more dynamic photo. I thought Sam submitted an outstanding suite of images this year, and this is one example of that. Excellent focus, caught the caver in motion and conveyed a sense of motion as they moved through the passage. I thought this was a really, really neat image. Again, innovation. Florian's lovely image of this bat here off center. So when I bring the photo up, oops, I don't mean to do that. When I bring the photo up here full screen, it conveys that sense of wonder and emotion. It's got an air of mystery to it. This is a European bat. It's not an American bat. But it had really, really nice depth to it. It shows a bat in a way that we would often hope to see one if we happen to encounter it. Let's see here. This one again showing, and that metal shouldn't have been there. I'm going to slide that over. Showing a caver in situ, a little bit of dynamic moving water here. This is a difficult image to get because you're not only popping off strobes in the water, but you're also trying to convey that motion, if you will, of the water itself, and that requires a more complex exposure paradigm. But again, excellent focus. George Taffet is a wonderful, wonderful photographer from Germany. Submits really, really lovely images year in and year out. Another one of our upcoming, up and coming photographers is Alice Bennett, S.J. Alice Bennett. She's a cave diver. She was the only cave diver that submitted photographs this year, and she's done some really, really lovely quality work over the years, last couple of years. Again, good focus. Focus is key. You want to be able to convey a pin sharp, there's a little bit out of focus over here, so I keep trying to point on the screen. It's a little bit blurry over here, but that's not too bad because the center of attention is this halo cline here, with the caver and so forth. Otherwise, a very, very sharp image with nice exposure balance, a nice subject, conveying what I think is an authentic experience. So let me keep moving. Anybody have any questions so far? Are there anything that anybody would like me to begin addressing at this point? Go ahead and speak up. I can't see the chat as easily when I'm sharing my screen. Okay, if there aren't any questions, let's continue on a little bit. In this image right here, this is another Florian Bachmann image. Really innovative because it has a very, very sharp, crisp image behind a silhouette, and that's what I think the judges really liked. They liked the color, they liked the crispness of the image in an innovative style. Dave Bunnell could probably win each and every year on technical merit alone. And so I keep hoping, and if he watches this, I keep wanting to encourage him to keep taking risks with his image. This was a little bit of a different image than I've seen from him over the past few years, but he always submits nearly technically perfect images. And in fact, I am slowly migrating to the idea of creating a tiered system, kind of like what we have for cartography, where you have a novice, someone who's never entered before, someone who has entered before and maybe won a few awards, and then you have somebody who's won best of show. Because we do, and to this point, I've tried to suppress that, but maybe it's time to go in that direction. I've thought about changing the Salon in a number of ways, and I'll speak to that a little bit later. But Dave really nailed the technical aspects of this image with the color in the foreground in this tidal pool inside this sea cave. Caver is a little bit static, but that's okay in this photo because really the emphasis is down at the bottom. This image here by George, and again, that metal is out of place. I hope I didn't do that in the real show. That would disappoint me. This one by George here was really, really interesting because it brought more than just the macro image. It brings more than just the macro image. You've got this lovely macro image, and that's always popular in terms of formations. But what really takes cavers and the audience breath away is context. Often in the past, there have been award winners where people have used the lensing from these drops. You can even see it a little bit in that one, maybe a little bit down here. Ryan Moorer, I think, submitted one that had really, really good lensing this year, where you can create context through the lens of the droplets, or you can create context by putting something else that draws the eye a little bit. This is certainly a lovely, beautiful technical image of this helictite, stalactite, complex here. But with the caver right there, it brings an emotion, it brings a dynamicness, dynamic aspect to this image that I think gave it a leg up when it came to scores with the judges. This photo right here by Tiffany Nardico, again, a really nice photo in terms of balance, no hot spots to speak of. And it's showing cavers in situ. The non-caver was a little bit confused by that, didn't realize what the story was, but her confusion by being a non-caver didn't detract from the overall score pool. She was still pleased with the way the image was. I would like to see more to this story. In fact, I would recommend that what Tiffany have done with this photo is create a storyline. One thing, we only had one submission of story this year, and that was at the beginning of the PowerPoint. I could scroll back to it. Nikki Fox did a lovely job narrating a storyline of doing this cave dive sump connection discovery. I would love to see a photo like this one right here, which is so beautifully done, be a part of a larger story narrative about survey. I think that would be a really, really neat story to tell, especially to non-cavers. If with more background context, this photo has legs, if you know what I mean. One of the really fun images, this one is the next one. It's called The River of Chucks, which I thought was outstanding, because it's really, really difficult to stack images like this. This is a multiple exposure of the same caver dynamically posed in this river system, and that can be really, really tricky to do, because you don't, when you superimpose image, you almost always have artifact from that superimposition. But they did a really, really good job of mitigating that and creating this lovely montage of photographer Chuck Sutherland in this cave. And so it won by being innovative. It won this award by being an innovative image that was technically sound and engaging in its content. I like this image a lot. This is the Whipple Cave, or Chimney Cave, excuse me. Daniel Powlack, he's a member of he's a member of the Park Service. He's a ranger, and he's an avid caver and cave photographer, and he's submitted some really, really strong work this year. One thing he did that I didn't care for was that he submitted the same image twice, once in color and once in black and white, and I would caution you against that. I would prefer, and I'm going to encourage, that when you submit your images, that you submit a diverse suite of images. If you're not going to submit a diverse suite of images, then submit a story. That way you can convey a story rather than try to just brute force your way into the salon. That would be the one fault I would give Daniel, is that he submitted the color version of this and then he submitted the black and white, and he did that a couple of times. And so the committee for accepting the photos or not, prior to the award round, decided that they would only accept one or the other of the same image. So take risks, diversify your image pool, go for humor, go for story, show us something that you see that somebody else might not see. I want to see what you see through your eyes. Yes, and that's a fine line, because you can do you can take an image and improve upon it. There's nothing wrong with taking a picture of what they used to call the Klansman in Slaughter Canyon Cave, which has been in the Salon, 20 times, or Never Sink, or Stevens Gap in Alabama, which has been in the Salon hundreds of times, literally. If you show it from a new perspective, it's going to have legs. It's going to have award quality. Okay, let's move on to Laura's image here. Okay, so Laura has been submitting for the last 3 or 4 years. She's a Western caver, so let's pull her image up. Really, really nice image. The only thing I would wish is maybe a little more dynamic in the person down here. A little bit of a hot spot by the stalagmite there, right in the middle of the image. But again, a really, really nice image overall. A technically difficult image to do because of the lighting challenge. A little dark here on the lower right. I want to see more of this with people doing things. My personal preference would be that an image like this, you have people doing things. These type of static images just don't go as far as they used to, like they might have in the 80s and 90s. Same thing here with Ryan. The ceiling is lovely. There have been instances of images like this winning best of show. Little bit hot down there above the caver, little hot right in here. Okay, I love the starburst. I like that personally. Some judges don't. Little hot, drawing the eye away from the center of subject there. But again, a lovely image that in terms of composition has been an award winner in the past. Again, can we get this caver doing something? Can we bring something new to this? Reflections are really cool. I've seen some nice reflection images. Bringing something new to this general composition. George's image here, one judge was ranked this one at the very top of her list. It didn't win award just because it didn't quite have enough dynamic aspect to it, but the differing colors was really amazing in that photo. Why the different pools have the different colors is still baffling to me and or some of the judges, and that's why it scored as high as it did. If the pools had been the same, or if they didn't quite have that color, this image probably might have made the Salon, but maybe not even made the award level. It was that uniqueness that brought it up to the award level. Again, another Laura Sangala photo. Again, this one, the caver is in an interesting position, but again, I'd like to see them more dynamic. The formation is astounding. This layer of nearly pristine gypsum. I have seen in Lechuguilla Cave, I've seen something like this, but not to this degree. I was rappelling in a shaft, and you couldn't see stone. All you could see was crystal refraction. It was mostly white, but you could see that hint of blue. And here you can see a strong hint of blue in this, and that unique perspective bumped it up. A new photographer this time around, Kyle. Got a really neat photo of a cricket just molting its old skin. Really nice technical image, a little bit out of focus in that early, in that front leg, but how are you going to deal with that when you're talking about a small, probably a small, they've got their lens wide open, which tends to eliminate depth. If I had my way on an image like that, this could have bumped a little higher if they had been able to maybe increase the strength of their strobe and ratcheted down their lens a little bit so that they could get just a little more depth with those legs. Other than that, in the lower right part of the image, it's just pin sharp. And I love the antenna uncurling from the molting of this cricket. A really amazingly innovative image, and a strong first submission for a photographer, a young photographer in Kyle, and I hope he keeps moving in that direction. Next image, lovely photo, really fun repeating echo or repeating reflection there. Hardly any hot pixels. Just the judges kind of got annoyed that there was a cave pack sitting over here, but okay, it didn't bother me. They're actually using it to blind one of their strobes. If you had to do it, it's a necessary evil. But that was the one little thing in that was that little bit hot up above the caver, and maybe that cave pack right there. But again, a really nice composition. And I see that Sophia just logged in. Welcome, Sophia. I'm glad you're here. We just happened to come up on one of your honorable mention photos. A really great photo from Colombia. What I really liked about it is that it conveyed a little bit, even though the caver is a bit static in this photo, it's still not entirely static. The caver is looking inward. Their arm is a little bit a little bit to the side, as if they were just pausing for a moment and contemplating what they're moving into. Still a little bright, you know, and that's one of the challenges of these entrance photos. You're not really using strobes anymore for these types of photos, but you often have that dynamic challenge that you have super bright pixels with super black pixels. But a really lovely, and again, Sophia was one of our first time entrants into the salon, and whatever reason my PowerPoint is frozen up. So there we go. I've got a potato of a computer out here in Montana. And this was our final honorable mention photo. You know, again, a static caver. Can we get this caver doing something? Now, again, we often, in these photos, the caver is serving as a mask, for strobes behind them. And that, again, that's sort of a necessary evil in some cases. But my suggestion is that if you have the inspiration to shoot a shot like this, that you create a masking caver in one place and maybe a dynamic subject elsewhere. Bring us along, and that may be if there was a limitation to this image, again, it's a static caver in a relatively static situation. The reflections are lovely, the colors are lovely, the exposure level is very, very good, really nice still cave pool. You know, it got there on technical expertise, on technical merit. So now, yeah,
I have a question.
Sure.
I understand what you mean by static caver in a still photo, but dynamic, can you explain that a little bit, what you're looking for?
Yeah, a dynamic caver. Let me see if I can pull an image up. Now, this is not the best version of a dynamic caver, but it is a version. So when we look at this one, and again, this one is actually SJ submitted a version of this last year. And the problem was that she had a lot of bubbles above the image. There was something just off, and we're like, and 2 or 3 of the judges said, "Hey, if you only did this, you know, you would take it up a level." And she did. She went back to the same area of this cave in the blue abyss, and these cavers are dynamic. If I bring it up in the full screen, this caver is not. You know, they're in motion, they're moving, is what I mean by that. Rather than standing and admiring, you know, here's an example of a combination of static and dynamic. We've got static cavers over here on the right. Static caver, maybe not static because he's belaying, but there's a dynamic person, a person in a little more of a dynamic pose, in motion, doing something, in a more of a storytelling pose, if you will. So let me pull this one up. These are examples here in this banner. If I just bring this up into full screen, dynamic pose, dynamic pose. You see what I'm saying, getting after there, Meredith? Is the idea of bringing story to the beauty. The top award winners are not only technically excellent, but they are bringing context and story to their images. And so let's move into the merit awards. A lovely, lovely life image of this snail on white flowing calcite. What an amazing composition. Really, really nice in the center of focus, giving context to this snail. And again, life we tend to get 1 or 2 merit awards every year. We had some outstanding life category images this year, and this was an example of one of them. Really, really nice lighting. Even the light of the animal itself is dynamic. Instead of being fully they could have gotten a little more exposure up here on this part of the carapace, but you know what? It tells the story of what a caver might see if they happen to notice a snail on white flowstone like that. So that one went to the merit award. Awesome. Again, another Nikki Fox photo. This one, because of its really strong depth of exposure. We call that dynamic range, and that's one of the real strengths of black and white. And I would love to see cavers go that way, bring dynamic range to photos. And even though white pixels, like if you're in a fully underground cave, if you're completely underground, white pixels become a detriment. But if you are in an entrance, white pixels are not so much. In fact, rarely are they a true detriment or considered a fault in a photo like when it comes to an entrance. And that's what she nails it here. She has blacks, all this lovely texture that's pin sharp throughout the image. I'm sorry I can't show you the original image, but when you zoom in on the original image, it is pin sharp in the full depth of range, in the entire photo. There's hardly anything wrong at all in this photo. Even the caver here in the middle of the image again is a little bit on the the cavers are a little bit static, but they're even a little more. They're just one step beyond static. They seem to have just paused in this moment, right? We know that a shot like this might take an hour to photograph correctly or more. The ability to convey that motion, even in a little bit of the sense, is a really strong point in an image like this. Another lovely life photo with an off-center, just barely in the rule of thirds here with the cap of this mushroom. But we've got a caver bringing context to this. You can even see the rack a little bit. This caver is doing a vertical cave. So we're telling a story about being in a pit and what you might see at the bottom of a pit if you happen to be fortunate and technically skilled enough to visit a vertical cave. A lovely contextual image. The center of the image, the center of emphasis is in perfect lighting and in pin sharp, and they're using that focus, if you will, as an emotional and contextual element to this photo. Another really fun live photo. To be able to catch a frog on a rope like that is pretty darn cool. Again, they bring the caver into the photo. I think they were lucky. I don't know if this frog was just cold and wanted to ride out of the cave, or how they managed to get this to get this shot is one of the aspects of really talented photographers. Like, how'd they do that? They were able to get the photographer to bring, the caver to bring context to the center of focus, which is this frog on rope. Lovely, clever title. Don't overlook the idea that a good title can convey some of the context that you're trying to give to a photograph. A couple of cavers this year just said, photo 1 from Chimney Cave, or Dave and Mike, Blue Abyss. I recommend that if you do decide to submit, that you try to be narrative in the title of your image, just to bring that slight edge of context to your photo. It'll help bring some sentiment, if you know what I mean. Elephant skin, a really nice photo. Not a single hot pixel to be found. Caver is relatively static, but I think this one got bumped up because of the really lovely texture and the compositional elements to this one. Again, a little bit of subjective. That's one of the reasons why I want you to think, to be prepared for subjectivity when it comes to this one won not because it was considered the best of it. It won because it was a consensus high technical merit. Here's an example of one that brings some context. Here's a caver in dynamic pose, moving through a really interesting cave passage, and they gave it Cave on the Brain. Caving on the Brain was the title for this one. I don't know why the title's not popping up there, but Caving on the Brain, there it is. And so this caver is in a dynamic pose, moving through a really interesting visual passage. No hot pixels. Everything's well in focus. The caver is moving. You can see their face. You can see that there's a story to be told in addition to a visually engaging cave passage. George's, we've looked at this one a few minutes ago. This one from George, again, got merit because of the high technical, he illuminated the ice stalagmites very, very well, very difficult to do, especially when you've got such a large passage with lots of different elements going on. Can we get these cavers doing something a little bit more? I'd like to see that. Because I know for a fact that these cavers are not actually masking any of the strobes. Maybe this guy in the bottom is maybe masking a strobe, but certainly this caver here, the second from the right, is not masking. Neither is the caver in the back, so they have him face forward, creating a center of emphasis with his headlamp. I'd like to see more cavers doing more stuff in this one. Best of show has been in the past where you have a bunch of cavers all doing different things, and that's really, really cool when they can pull that off. And SJ does that in this photo. She has some other photos that we're going to see in a minute or two, but a really lovely photo that she was able to control for bubbles with a slight exception just on the edge of her exposure up here, but she was able to control bubbles with this guy down here. I'll go back one more. So created a wonderful depth of image with lovely color range and story content. This one, again, really, really difficult to do. It's so hard to get these enormous rooms like this. And this one got some wows from our non-cavers. So our non-caver jury bumped this up a little bit because we have a caver that brings context both on the edge of the image and in the rule of thirds part of the image in this photo. So a really, really lovely photo of a huge, huge room. No hot pixels. You see, hot pixels are a commonly identified fault in an image like this. So the room is well lit, and you have storytelling elements to this photo. So now let's move into the top 5. And again, the runners up here all get merit awards. The best of show is the only one that has a different medal other than a merit award, but these ones were the top 5 point scoring. Dave Bunnell does a lovely job of bringing outstanding technical excellence to this photo, showing the complexity of the cave, the various textures, just ever so slightly hot right in there, right in here, a little bit there. But the caver is dynamic. Even though the caver is standing still, nevertheless, they are posing in a dynamic way with that camera. So he's bringing several elements to bear: the texture, lovely lighting and depth of focus, and a caver who's doing something. George Taffet's photo here, again, really, really difficult shot. You have to pop off strobes in such a way that you not only get sharp, crisp, with a potentially moving element here at the bottom. So that caver has to stand exceptionally still if you're going to get that light beam. And you're going to pop off strobes, but nevertheless, he had the aperture open wide enough to create a motion effect in that water stream. And that's one of the real challenges in an image like this, is that you can pop off the strobes. What you'll end up with is spackling in the waterfall or the flowing water, and that in itself can be very, very cool. And as an artist, you have license with that. If the spray is really, really cool, then show that spackling effect, if you will, that droplet-like effect. But this one, I think George did a really good job of showing motion using that longer image exposure to collect that moving water, but also brought that precision in the photo with the caver and the texture in the rock. Ryan, really strong suite of images this year. I want to keep encouraging Ryan to take risks, and he did that in some of his photos. He's been bringing really innovative images over the last 2 or 3 years. Again, he used a sort of minimalist approach to this composition, with the light beam shining down on the caver. The caver is a little, is certainly static in this one, but it's appropriate that the caver would be static, because if you were standing up near an image, you'd probably be wanting to look up into that skylight as well. So I think it's not entirely, pure static in that case. So a really lovely job of bringing multiple elements of storytelling, and a great title, Classic Hellhole. It tells one of the reasons why people are so loyal and devoted to this cave system, which is just an amazing cave system in West Virginia. Wonderful shot by S.J. Alves Bennett, caver conveying emotion, and I thought this was a really cool shot. If there was any one fault to this, it's that this could have won Best of Show. It was very relatively close, just a little bit too bright, right down here behind it. But that's what's so hard about cave diving photography, is that what you're dealing with is this, to stay still enough, and even with a strobe going off is really difficult. So the jury is mindful of that when it comes to cave diving, because the fact that it's so hard to control your motion and yet still convey it, if you know what I mean, in a meaningful way. And so really powerful shot of this caver moving into the, it's implied that they're moving into the unknown, because they're spooling outline as we speak here. SJ has won several awards over the past few years because she's showing her earlier shots. So this one right here is one that, while really strong, and yes, it won a merit award, I want her to keep moving into that dynamic side. She seems to have an eye for dynamic pose in cave divers, and so I want to continue to encourage SJ to keep doing that. A lot of her photos that she had of really dynamic cavers, unfortunately, because just didn't have the technical excellence. And so she certainly made several of them into the show. But the one thing that was sort of limiting her to, she got first runner-up, so who's complaining, right? She got second place overall. But I want to keep her pushing in that direction, bringing dynamic pose and working on some of those where the technical elements just dialed it down. And here's our grand prize winner. This was our Best of Show this year. I actually was a little surprised, but the comments from the judges were almost uniform in that. And so the comments from the judges were, it's like, look at his face. He's telling a story. He is coming out of what must have been just an exceptionally difficult cave. The technical aspects, not any hot pixels. Everything is in focus, even beyond the caver. There's a depth here and an emotional quality, a storytelling quality, and an innovative image. So what do we have? One, again, really good technical excellence, unique image, storytelling, multiple elements. It brings all of those pieces together. So that's what makes the difference between a good image. We had lots and lots of really good images this year. The technical proficiency is going up, and I want to see more of that. That said, I want to continue with all of you folks out there who have not submitted cave pictures in the past. I want you to submit. It never hurts to submit, and if you don't get accepted, I'm going to make a point of trying to give you the best suggestions I can for how to get those images up to being accepted. Once you get 1 or 2 images accepted, the next challenge for you is, how do I get an honorable mention? Where do I go with my image taking to get me to where I might get an honorable mention or a merit? The folks who move up quickly are taking innovative images that are, and they've brought some technical expertise that they had prior to them entering the photo salon. Other folks just chip away at it, chip away at it, chip away at it. Ryan has been fortunate to have been awarded the Best of Show Up for 2 out of the last 3 years. And he continues to bring challenging images to the caving world. And what I mean by challenging is that it opens your mind to the realm of possibility when it comes to cave photography and subject matter. It's certainly formations are lovely, and we had lots and lots of really, really good formation photos. Let me give you another example of one. If I can scroll down through here, here's an awesome photo by Dave Bunnell. Again, this particular image, or this particular area of cave, this looks a lot like some other images that I've seen by the Bostids. Again, it was a little bit out of focus, low in the image with the caver, and so that sort of kept it out of the award side of the equation. But Peter Bostid submitted an image similar to this a few years ago, but he had a slightly different angle. It was really dynamic, and the color range was exceptional, and it was in the top 5, I believe, in that year. We didn't have a lot of these types of images this year, where we had people, in the past few years, we've had cavers submit pitting images, maybe almost to excess over the past, in the show or two. Here's an unusual one. This one has a more of an artistic effort to it. Sam, I think that's his wife on rope there. And I encourage you to challenge us with photos like that. I do not see images like this as a fault. I know that there's a photographer out there that I would love that I absolutely adore his work, but he got lampooned, before my time. He submitted these amazing photos, but he was lampooned for the subject matter of them because he had Vikings, or he had, people in non-caving clothing. I say bring it. Bring your image that you think conveys your emotion to a cave experience. And if that includes subject matter, then by all means do it. If for some reason it's inappropriate, we'll try to let you know. I got there was a photo a few years ago that people kind of, because they were coming out of the cave and they were sharing a bottle of wine at the top of the entrance of the cave, and I did get one comment about that, but you know what? It was a really cool image. Here's another Ryan image. Again, kind of showing a little bit of tenacity through a narrow section of cave. It gives me this one doesn't give me the willies like his other photo does. That photo literally, I have a bit of latent claustrophobia, but caving is actually an empowering experience for me because I push back against that fear. That's why I really couldn't do cave diving, because it's just the idea of going through a constriction while wearing scuba tanks is just one, maybe 10 steps too far for me. But I get in a passage like this and it gives me the willies. This one gives me the willies, even though I do feel so great when I've managed to push through a cave passage like that. Again, you're welcome to ask any questions. Meredith, if somebody puts a chat message question, please just go ahead and speak out on their behalf for me.
Will do.
I'd love to see more science-y type photos like this one. Stories and science photos, I think, are underrepresented in humor. We had a really good, this one makes me laugh because they're in a passage with popcorn and they're eating popcorn. I think that's great. I think that's really cool. Bring the humor, bring, composition, this one was the death of Tommy. Okay. Those are great. Bring science and survey. I thought this was a really, really cool image by Ryan showing, doing a geology survey. Really, really cool. But we just don't have a ton of, Sophia, really, really nice photo. This one was actually, I was almost tempted to admit she had 2 or 3 in this that were of collecting specimens. Here's the other one in the cave, and that could have very well been in the story category. Again, I'd love to see more of that because it tells our story. We enjoy, we explore, we can, that sort of tripartite message, slogan that we have in the NSS. Here's an example of that lensing I was telling you about earlier. Again, the only fault in an image like this is that it's been done before. Doesn't mean it's difficult or that it's easy. You can work on your cave chops working on images like this. I recommend it. Take more shots. I think part of the reason that folks don't have more what they would consider salon quality images is that they're not taking. I know that's true with me, is that I'll get an image in my head and I'll get that image, but I may have overlooked a stronger version of composition when it comes to these types of images. So take risks. You just never know. And again, Sophia, if you're out there, you had a really lovely series of formations this year. Again, what can you do to make it different? Dave, again, a beautiful, almost technically little hot right there, little hot right there. But again, lovely image, but can we put something down here? Can we bring more elements to that image? Because that's the difference between making the salon, making the presentation is an award unto itself. That's the goal that I have, is that if you get your image in, that's an award unto itself. We had something on the order of 300 images submitted this year, of which roughly 200 or so were accepted. Another point, and I've been waiting to make this point. We had some technical issues with submission this year. I'm sorry about that. COVID was part of the problem, and I won't lie to you. I actually was strongly advocating that we not do Salon this year because I knew that I was already on the edge as far as my ability to manage the administrative side of this task. And we did have some folks that didn't get into Salon this year because I didn't receive their emails. Either it just didn't show up and we didn't have time to navigate the technical image, or they submitted and then it got buried in the landslide of emails that I've been dealing with. I'm a college professor. And even now that I'm sitting in Montana, I'm spending 4 or 5 hours a day working I got my head in my hands, like, how am I going to have this semester go off? So it was a very challenging salon for me personally, because I was just overwhelmed with the virtual tasking that I have on my plate right now. So one of my goals for next year is to create a singular method of I see you waving there Meredith, is to create a singular method of submission that is automated or semi-automated. That is to say, we're going to create a way for you to upload your photos to a drive or a website. That way we know that the images are there. It can be independently verified one way or another. So one of our photographers never got the email, never got it. It probably got dumped into junk email. I have emails from 4 years ago from this photographer. I didn't get the one with this submission, and just couldn't do it. So Meredith, did you have something?
Yes, Dan has some couple of questions in the
Sure.
chat box.
Okay. Let me let me look at the chat. Can you read them to me?
Yeah. Do the various components of the judging have any sort of weighting? Or is it essentially how they all add up for each judge and then how the consensus of those individual impressions end up?
It's very much intended to be a consensus. So we have three major categories. We had three major categories: technical merit, impact was one, and the impact was sort of the jack of all trades category. Does this elicit an emotional, and so that's where the caver input can really have a say, because we did have an ecumenical judge panel. What may strike a caver may not strike a non-caver, or vice versa. So we had, okay, so it was technical, artistic, and impact. Because there are times when images may not have technical excellence, but they have enormous impact. And a classic example of that was the Tiananmen Square photo, where that person with the suitcase is standing in front of a tank. That photo is terrible from a technical aspect. It's out of focus, it's grainy, but it has an emotion that could never be duplicated, almost or very rarely duplicated. This year, we weighted things evenly. We didn't give pluses or, in past years we have thought about, tweaking the technical a little more than the other. This year it was the judges elected to make it even across all three. And so it was very much a consensus score across technical, across artistic composition, and then impact. Was there a second question in there? I can't hear you, Meredith. You're muted.
I know. I think you probably answered all of the questions in that one.
Sure. Let me see if I can find a photo that may have certain elements, but something might have precluded it, shall we say. Here's a good one. Here's a Ryan Moore photo, and I don't mean to this photo is so close. Is so close in a number of ways, but it has a number of technical issues. It's a little bit, the eye is moving in multiple directions here. So his lighting, he's got lighting down here at the bottom of the image. It's kind of drawing you down here, but there's nothing to see. It's just a blur, it's just a flat pond. He's got a caver down here, but the caver is sort of out of, he's giving a vertical context, and that gives him some points. It's certainly lovely in terms of the texture of the rock here. You've got a dynamic caver at the but your eye is moving all over the place. So certainly made it into the Salon, but not going to win any awards because it's drawing the eye too many directions, and that's a very common fault when it comes to cave photographs, is that you have elements that are pulling the eye every which way rather than a sort of either a progressional way. Sometimes you can have the eye moving where the eye moves from, say, point A to point B to point C. That's really, really hard to do, by the way. But a more common scenario is the eye zigzagging around randomly, if you know what I mean. And I'm trying to find an example of something like that. I'm just scrolling through the images here.
Joe said for that picture you've got up right now, if you cut the bottom third of the photo, it would be more dramatic.
Yeah, it would be. If if you have the pool here, you could almost crop this. Let me just take some artistic license here and just do this. It's hard to say. Can we do something like that? Is it possible? I wouldn't disagree with that. you know, it's a lovely idea. I mean, it really does put cavers in a dynamic context. It's just there's just the je ne sais quoi, if you will. I mean, the eye is moving around a little too much in that. Let's see another one example of that, if I can find a good one. Let's see. Here's one that's got a few technical issues with it. Nikki Fox, outstanding, you know, portfolio of images, lots and lots of hot pixels, lots and lots of hot pixels. If we were going to have hot pixels there, let's have them in the waterfall. Okay. And again, the eye is being drawn away from the waterfall. The caver is a little bit off, you know, again, that's caving, right? That's what makes these images so difficult to capture, is getting, you know, the caver is in a really pretty nice position. I love the shadow here. I would love to see this caver in a slightly different pose in order to create a twinning effect, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to, you know, if Nikki has her, you know, your marching orders, Nikki, is I love this shot, but we had a little bit of bright drawing us away from the center, focused on the right. And I would love to see, you know, again, that one with that element that is just almost there. Let's see. Right here. Now this one, okay, Laura loves this photo. Laura Sangala. She actually did get an honorable mention for a version of this photo, I think 2 years ago, where she had a caver kind of moving past this stalagmite, this ice column. And again, she had the lovely green, you know, this column forms every year. It's temporary ice, and it always forms in that spot, and it's got this lovely chemistry to it that gives it that green hue. And she had a caver kind of, you know, moving up to it. And that won an honorable mention. This photo, you know, certainly makes the Salon. It's got good overall light balance. Certainly the green you know, column is interesting, but again, it's not going to go anywhere because she's actually done a better job with this photo from the storyline in previous iterations of this photo. Yeah, Meredith, go ahead.
Do you have some photos that did not make the show that you could explain, or would that be kind of bad form?
Yeah, I don't believe I have any with me.
Okay.
This computer was not the one that I generated. Let me just double check,
Okay.
because I did use this computer as part of the resource, but I'm not sure.
I mean, that might
Yeah,
give...
let's see. Yeah, let's take a look here. Let's see. I'm gonna look and see if I can pull up one of Dave's photos. If I can do it, let me use. Are we still looking at the PowerPoint? Is that what you see on your screen? Is the PowerPoint, Meredith?
Yes.
Okay. So let me stop share here, and I do have some of these photos. Let's see.
And I would direct everybody else to the chat box because there's some good comments over there. Dan has a very nice comment.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. Let's look at this one. I think this is from Dave Bunnell. You know, and he always, you know, he's such a good photographer from a technical perspective.
Yep.
That, you know, 2/3. Yeah, I'm going to. I'm waiting for the photo to pop up.
Oh.
It's not popping up. Oh, here we go. That's because I was trying to load the big image. Okay, so here, let me share screen. Okay, let me open the image, and then I'll share it with you. I don't think this one made the Salon. At least I don't recall it making the Salon. Okay, yeah, this is the one. This is a good one. So where's my Zoom at? Come on, Zoom. There we go. Share screen. Okay, this one right here. Share. This photo, okay, right? You know, he has a sea kayaker that I can't really see very clearly. Not a particularly interesting cave entrance, but with a big black whatchamacallit right in the middle of the image. Okay. I know this is a tough image because he's got a little vignetting on the edge of his image where he was using a really wide angle lens, probably that was on the limit of his photo sensor. You know, he's using a full frame sensor in his stuff. But it looks like he's got some vignetting on the edge of this. Either that or he just couldn't flood it enough with his strobes. But it's not, dare I say it, I don't want to bash Dave. I am a huge fan of his work, and he does amazing work. But I want to challenge him again. Can we see something different? But this one just doesn't have enough interesting elements to it. And so it did not make Salon this semester, or this semester. Here I am, the professor talking, this year around. Let's see if I can find another one. Stop share. Let me see if trying to find one. One that I'll see one. I think if Florian's here, let's see if I find one that reindeer. See, Florian had most of all, if not almost all of his stuff admitted. Looking for some other ones here. Laura. Sorry for going so slow, guys. Okay, here's one I don't think made the show. Open it up. And I'll share this one. Laura submitted two photos that were sort of in this. They just made this discovery, so I realized that's why she submitted them. Not an uninteresting photo, but a lot of technical issues. Big shadow right up here in the upper left. Shadow throughout the center of the image. Certainly an amazing place to take some photos, and I would love her to go back and try again with this spot. She had a couple of photos with that really weird bedding. You know, the one made the show and it actually got an award. The other one maybe didn't even make the show just because it was very static and it just didn't bring enough elements. Again, the idea is good, putting the caver in context. But again, what's the star of the show here? Is it the caver? I don't think so. I think the caver should be a secondary point of emphasis, but she's placed the caver in a primary point. I want to see more of this fun stuff. I don't know how this stuff was created, much less stacked up. So I would like to see the story be the formations with the caver bringing context rather than the formations bringing context to the caver. That's my impression. Okay. I haven't read the comments on that.
So Dean, you said that he's kind of the focal point. Where would he be in this picture to not be a focal point?
Perhaps either behind the formation, maybe perhaps in this area, if it's possible.
Yeah.
You can put them at, you think rule of thirds when it comes to emphasis. So yeah. She's got a rule of thirds line going across right here, and that's not a bad thing. She's got a sort of rule of thirds line with this stack of formations on the left and this stack of formations. But again, she's put him right front and center. Not a terrible pose, but it's just, I think I would send this one back for another look, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's not a bad photo, but she had enough good photos that I think that it was kind of like, well, we had to choose one not to admit, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
What else do we have? Okay, let's see here. Glad I have this folders here. Tiffany, I wonder if I have one from you. Tiffany did extraordinary for a first-time composition. I think, okay, here's an example. You had some really good ones with the Bat Life series, but I think because that was repetitive, the judges, in looking at the whole body, said, okay, this one photo was really, really good, and these other ones kind of, the really, really good one drowned out the ones that were maybe second best, if you know what I mean. So this one right here, a little bit of focal issue. Let me share this one. Share screen. Yeah, not that one. That one. Oh, just a hint of loss of focus above this decaying bat, which is amazing, by the way. This was, I thought, your best example. And so when you submit multiple similar images, what will happen is the judges will tend to high grade a little bit. That's just human nature, if you know what I mean. Again, diversify image and bring your best and be able to take a risk. If for some reason the one you thought was best didn't make it, then you certainly have a pool of images to draw from in a subsequent Salon, and that's great because now you've got multiple years of entry, if you know what I mean. I think I saw the chat pop up. Was there something there? I often struggle.
It's me, Dan Lanini, making various comments.
Sure. So I see, I often struggle with including all the cool elements I got into the frame versus cropping them out to direct the eye and simplify the composition. Pool at the bottom of the example helps give depth to the pit and direct the eye towards the interesting formations. That's a good point. It's always how do the elements work together often. Would have liked that too, to kind of aim our eyes to the center rather than the edge of the photo. Yeah, okay. But yeah, Dan, your point is well taken. Your point is well taken, and it's always a chemistry, and it is subjective. If you remember, if I'm dating myself here, the Dead Poets Society, where they ripped the first chapter out of the poetry book because they're trying to plot the technical with the form on an XY axis for whether it's a good poem or not. Keep working on those elements. Keep trying to bring as many elements as possible without overstepping the bounds. Just like too many slices of pepperoni can ruin a good everything pizza, if you know what I mean. Is that a bad analogy? I don't know. Any other questions? Any other questions? But if I were to leave you with some takeaways, first of all, we're going to work on the submission process. That has to be our number one thing. It's too difficult for both the artists and the staff to handle the way that we are, because some people are sending WeTransfer and those links expire, and then some people, can't do Dropbox very easily, or they don't understand Google Drive very well, or mailing. I did have one person mail in their CD-ROMs, and that's okay, but certainly electronic is more convenient, but it has its drawbacks. So we're going to work on that as our number one priority. The other things I would do is take risks. I was really amazed at what Dave Bonnell told us last year in last year's critique about how he was improvising with his strobes and using a point and shoot camera. It's not the camera, it's how you use it. So take risks with your elements, diversify your entry pool. Certainly try to bounce your images off of people before you submit. Certainly your circle of friends will go ooh and ah, and that's cool. But the more diverse your people that are critiquing you before you enter, the more likely you're going to submit a truly strong image if you have a diverse pool of people critiquing you prior to entry. And Meredith, did you have one more question?
Yes. So this year it seemed like there were kind of categories that seemed different from previous photo salons.
Categories?
Yeah, like the life and cavers. I mean,
One thing I did do differently this year's Salon was that I put them in order. In past years, what I have done is one year, and I might go back to this, I just wanted to experiment with the idea of showing all the formations at once, or showing all the cavers at once, or all the cave ones at once. And I have dabbled in the idea of saying, hey, here is a sub-award, if you will, of the best caver photo, or the best cave photo, or the best entrance photo, or the best humor photo. I was kind of, this was sort of a way of moving in that direction, where I showed them by order of category, not by ascending. In other years, I've done ascending score, where I started with the lowest scoring images and went to the highest scoring images. And that's really cool too, because you can see the quality going up as a whole as we're going there. And so people have been very complimentary of that. But thank you, Margot. I appreciate the comment on the idea that I did each category in numerical order, because 1 is story, 2 is
whatever it
entrance.
was.
Yeah, entrance.
My
3
husband
is,
and I liked the categories too.
okay.
So that's a keeper in my book.
Okay. Well, we'll continue to do that unless there was overwhelming. Oh, I didn't like that. I do like the idea of crescendo, but you know, maybe I can think of some ways to do that. I am always looking for input. Dan, I know were you interested in doing serving as a judge? Was that you last year that said you were interested in serving as a judge?
I would be interested in doing that, but I am
Okay.
also more interested in submitting photos, which would
Okay.
preclude me from being a judge.
Sure.
So,
Well, what we would do, one of the biggest challenges I have is bringing judges in. And one of the things I'm trying to do is lower the workload on the judges. That is to say, in the past, we've just given them each and every image, and that is a monstrous task. And it's fatiguing to go through 300 to 400 images. So what I did this year was I pre-screened the obvious ones that were obviously technically problematic, shall we say. I just said, okay, I'll handle those later. We'll go with the ones that we think will make the salon, and then we go from there. The best of category, that would be good, yeah, to bring some underrepresented images. I like that. That seems to resonate with me, the idea of best of category. How to couch it in terms of not giving away the store, if you will. You know, I may say, hey, best of category, but then show, you know, they end up getting an award of some kind. You know, something along those lines would be a nice element to add to the salon, if you know what I mean. But Dan, in your case, if you decide to submit a work of something, what I would try to do, this is the other aspect of what I'm trying to do, is bring more judges in. I'd like to have at least 5. I'd like to have 5, each coming from different specialties, so that we have a more ecumenical. Again, I like the idea of a non-caver who has some artistic expertise serving as a judge. I'd like to have cavers, because they know when something's really tough and something's really badass. But badassness, if you will, does tend to be relatively obvious when you see it, if you know what I mean. But I do like to have a caver. I like to have somebody who has been awarded Best of Show in the past. I'd love Dave Bonnell to be a judge, you know, but you know, if he wants to, I would certainly. But what we would do is we would recuse you from your images. By having a 5 panel, it would allow 4 other judges to review your work.
oh, I see. Well, yeah, I was going to say, if
when
I'm
it's 3 judges, that gets tough, because now you only have 2 points of view, and that can skew a score significantly. So I want to have a minimum of 5, so that if there is somebody that has a predisposition, they can be outvoted, so that we see a true consensus on a more general level. And when in the shows that I've had a more diverse judge category, I tend to get more favorable, you know, responses to how that salon goes off. Being my own worst critic, I just want to work on this submission process. It's just, it's a bit overwhelming now that it's migrated to almost all electronic. We just have to come up with a unified submission process so we don't let things slip through the cracks, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I agree with what you're saying, and we can talk about it offline. But yes, I'm willing to serve as a judge, and if you have enough judges and I end up judging or not judging my own photos, obviously,
Yes,
and that can still be done somehow,
sure,
then
sure.
sure, contact me and we can talk about it.
And that goes for anybody who's here today. If you feel like you would like to be a part of this process in one way or another, I would be more than happy to bring you on. Start, you know, we're always fired up at the end of this photo salon, and then a few months pass, and then the atrophy sort of sets in, if you know what I mean. Since we're all cooped up with COVID, the story goes on with COVID. We should maybe it's high time we can get our ducks in line now, or in the next next week or so, so that we're ready to go, and all we have to do is bring photos in.
I also like your idea of having more judges, because I think it then makes, if there is a particular judge who tends to lean towards any particular thing, it lessens their impact if there's
Absolutely.
5 judges.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just overall better.
I want a rigorous contest. I want this, if it's going to be a contest, I am always about the idea of celebrating people's work, because we know how difficult it is to take K photographs, and K photography is an obsession bordering on madness at times. You just want that shot, and you're going to do whatever it takes to get it. I have about half a dozen shots that are in my head that are just driving me crazy, that I can't go down and just go do it, because I got to round up the crew to do it and find the time to get everybody there and get them all in place, and then have them sit there and do their thing for maybe for a beer afterwards, if you know what I mean.
Photographers are a crazy subgroup of cavers who are a crazy subgroup of society.
That's a good way to put it. That's a great way to put it. Are there any other comments or suggestions, or so as a non-photographer, I hadn't noticed the crescendo quality. I work very hard to do that. I didn't have enough time this time around, with all that I was struggling with. Meredith will vouch for that a little bit, I think. But the categorization actually sped up the process a little bit. If I were to do one thing differently, I might have crescendoed each category, as it were. But I thought it worked really, really well. The other thing that I am actively working on, that's a little bit behind the scenes, is that for years and years now, we've been using the same music for the Salon. And it was an album called Salon, and I would like to open for more artistic input on that side. We certainly don't want to infringe on the Artist's Bill of Rights, but if you happen to know good music and you have any suggestions for some music to go, it's about time, now that we've been using that same music soundtrack for at least 5 years, that we begin. I've been trying to put Bruce's in. I wasn't able to do it quite this year. I had the slide in there, but I couldn't get the track inserted in the time frame that we had. I want to use some of Bruce's work, Bruce White. He's got some really nice work. But if you happen to know an artist who would be willing to share their sort of ambient type music, it needs to be ambient. We don't want to take away from the visual element. We want the music to augment the visual element. And so the Salon is excellent for that, but we've been using it for a while, and I'd like to take us to the next chapter on that, if you know what I mean.
I did notice how
Keith
I had a great seat in front of my big screen TV with a multi-speaker surround sound system, though, this year at the Salon. And that music, although I've heard it many times before, is very appropriate for the
It's
salon.
exceptionally,
So,
and I struggle with that because I have several vibes in my body that say, hey, we got to try this. And I tend to be exceptionally careful um, to not bring, I like Alice in Chains, Down in a Hole, as much as anybody, but I'm not going to play that song ever. You know what I'm saying? It's going to alienate our audience.
or whatever that song is by Simon and Garfunkel about having a Nikon, and I got a Nikon camera. Take a photograph.
Kodachrome.
No, you don't want that.
Yeah, or The Sound of Silence or something. You know what I mean? That one might be a little better, but it's still gonna detract from So I'm gonna work on curating additional music. Kodachrome. When I think of all the crap I learned in high school, playing over this amazing cave image.
So, no, I'm not suggesting that.
Yes. So if you, again, I solicit ideas for good ambient music to go with our salon, if you know what I mean. All right. Well, we've been on for 90 minutes, guys. That's gone really, really quickly. As always, if you have questions, reach out to me. It's photosalon@caves.org, or that is basically an alias for my main email address, which is wiseman, a name harder to live up to than to have. Wiseman, letter D, so WISEMAND @uindy.edu. UIndy, University of Indianapolis. So uindy.edu. The more you engage me in front, the fewer surprises or disappointments you might have down the line. But get those photos out there, get people looking at them, keep chipping away on your art. Have people bounce those ideas, and it will lead to really, really good things for everybody. Salon is so popular around the world. It's one of our best and brightest voices to the public when it comes to that visual aspect of how we convey our emotions and our passion. I say caving is a lifestyle. It's not an avocation. It's a lifestyle. So how do we bring that emotion to bear to others? Is in a big sense the visual element. This convention has a potential to be exceptionally impactful in the larger community because we went virtual. We have dallied with virtual presentations in the past. When we were at Montana, I think we did a live show while we were doing the awards. We streamed it live. I think that's the direction we're going to head one way or another, is bringing our content to a larger audience virtually, even if we have a live convention. And with that, I'll go ahead and stop recording. As always, just reach out to me, and thank you for your time. And I beg and plead with you to submit your images, because it's a real joy for me to be able to bring those images in a meaningful way to the rest of the community.